Hello and welcome to Balancing Act Life and Struggles of a Teenage Girl, a mental health and wellness and semi unfiltered podcast made for teens by a teen. I'm your host, Morea, a 16-year-old girl from New York. And here on Balancing Act, I bring you weekly episodes featuring relatable conversations, personal stories, and practical insights to help you navigate life's balancing act and related challenges, and to remind you that you are not alone. Okay, so I've literally never edited an episode this fast. Like, it wasn't out of a lack of time, it was out of pure passion for this episode because I just loved it so much. And I was like, I need to get this episode out there ASAP. In this episode, I am so happy to be speaking with Alexandra Miles. Alexandra is so cool, and I can't fit everything she does into a short intro, so I'll just let you know what you need to know for this episode. Alexandra is the founder of Project Blackbird, a 501c nonprofit organization that tours schools and other locations to destigmatize mental health, making it safer and more accessible for underserved populations to connect with mental health facilities in their communities. A central part of the discussion Project Blackbird facilitates is around a film Alexandra helped to create called Blackbird, which helps to spread awareness and empathy for people with eating disorders and trauma, and really helps to start a conversation about these topics that are too often stigmatized. In this episode, we talk about Alexandra's journey and why she created Project Blackbird. We get real about what it's like to express your experience with mental health through art. We talk about meaningful experiences that Alexandra has had during Project Blackbird, how many people she's helped, and how people are shedding shame around mental health in real time, and it gets a little bit emotional towards the end. This is a wonderful episode if you want to learn about how people are opening a conversation around mental health and sharing their experiences to destigmatize this topic, and how you can get involved in the conversation and in Project Blackbird. You'll also hear in this episode about the amazing resources that Project Blackbird offers to support people through their mental health journeys, and I've linked those all in the description, so check it out. So let's get into the episode. Alexandra, I am so happy to have you on the podcast today.
I am so honored to be on this podcast, and I'm so excited to chat more with you.
So, just starting off, I know I said a little bit about what Project Blackbird is, but can you let the listener know what is Project Blackbird in a more of a longer explanation, I guess?
Sure. So I'll give just a couple quick further details about the organization, pull back the curtain a little bit where it started. I started the organization because of my own personal experience. I was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa back in 2018. And this was back when I lived in Los Angeles. And I met a young woman who the film is based off of. Her name is Kendra Williams, and she comes on tour with me through Project Blackbird, the program, the touring organization. I met her at the treatment center, and she is who Blackbird is based off of. She had a tattoo of a blackbird on her neck, and she was very quiet and didn't speak to anybody. And both of us had experienced a lot of shame and silence ourselves around the eating disorder, but around mental health in general within our communities. It wasn't safe to talk about mental health. And when we did, we were either told, no, you're fine, or we heard a lot of kind of faith based messaging around just God fixing it, that it's going to be okay. And we didn't need to worry about the struggle, or we'll get you help, but just never talk about this outside of the household. And we both realized that we thought that we were struggling on our own in our community, when in fact, there were so many others that were having those very similar feelings, emotions, struggles as we were. And so I created this film about these two young women, similar to us, but it's a narrative film about these two young women who meet and connect. And then we used that film to engage different audiences, similarly of different communities that felt this shame and silence, to engage them and allow themselves to see themselves in both of these young characters at the treatment center. And so what the program is that you shared a little bit about in the beginning, it's a touring program where we screen the film. We have a celebrity engaged panel. Myself and the original Blackbird sit on the panel as well, but then we invite a different kind of celebrity or public figures. So we've had actors, we've had NFL players, other athletes, we've had singers, but really these community heroes that our audience can look at and engage with on the panel. And we all just have a conversation about our shared experience of shame and silence in all of our communities and our honest struggles, what we struggled with, what we still struggle with because we're human. And then we engage our audience in a journal activity. And then ultimately, we provide a resource fair and free therapy for all of our audience members, free therapy for a full year just to get them started on their journey.
Yeah. And so I guess what about your experience and realizing that you weren't alone in your struggle and that you didn't have to internalize it made you decide to choose film specifically as a way to share your
Y-
experience with other
Yeah.
people?
Yeah. It's a great question. Film, the film is actually what started the organization, but the reason it's so important and the reason I think it's worked so well is that with narrative film specifically, not documentary, but narrative film, I think we all lose ourselves in narrative film. We start to really empathize with those characters. When you watch a show that's about a legal kind of like a crime show that has a lot of legal jargon thrown around, all of a sudden you find yourself feeling like a lawyer. You're talking like a lawyer in your day to day life. When you watch a film about doctors, your entire world becomes that. You lose yourself in the character. You almost feel like you are that character. And so I think that's the power of this program, starting with a narrative film, is that everyone in the audience lets down their wall. Instead of feeling like they're being talked at, or instead of feeling like they're sitting through a lecture, they're actually just suspending their disbelief and falling into the eyes and the soul of this character that we put in front of them on screen, and pairing that with then the real Blackbird, the real two humans on that screen, pairing that with sharing the story and sharing that actually was a true story, that those were two real individuals. I think something about that has been really impactful and has evoked a lot of empathy in the audience in a different way. And then the reason, honestly, that we had started the organization, somebody asked me after I created the film why I created the film. And I realized that one film particularly, I did not create to win awards. I didn't create that film to be the best film on this planet. But the reason I created it was for impact. I wanted somebody to watch that film and see themselves on screen. I wanted someone to watch that film and understand what really lies beneath mental health struggles and eating disorder. I wanted someone to watch that film and understand the importance of wanting to understand someone that might look different than you, might seem very different than you characteristic wise, but I wanted someone to understand how similar we all are at the core.
That's so meaningful. You're saying we empathize with characters, so why can't we spread that same empathy to the people we see in front of us as
100%.
well and realize that
Yes.
we all have so much in common, that we're all struggling with something and that you don't have to feel alone in that.
Yeah.
And since this film was a narrative, but it was so much based on your experience and Kendra Williams' experience, what was it like to portray yourself in this film? Did it feel at all like you were, in a way, like, reliving your experience almost when you had to get into character? Was it triggering or was it more of, like, a release?
It was triggering. It was really hard and something that I think made me grow, helped my recovery grow because it was triggering. I realized in that moment how much I was still struggling, how difficult it was. I was scared to really let go because deep down, I didn't trust myself yet that I could come out. And to me, that meant I was not entirely healed. There was more work to be done there. But yeah, it was incredibly difficult. And I did a lot of journaling, a lot of processing after the fact. In fact, in order to play that role too, I actually found a lot of the old artwork that I had done from treatment, and then I created new artwork for that character. Um, and it brought me into both this space of pain, but also recovery. I mean, it takes place in the treatment center, and I remember those feelings of being so bullish about my own recovery in that treatment center. I wanted so badly to heal in that treatment center. So it was also incredibly positive, bringing back that deep desire to live that I felt in that moment, that character felt in that moment. But it was almost this feeling of being paralyzed where you really, in that moment, and Kendra Williams and I actually connected on this in the Real Treatment Center. In that moment in treatment, we didn't want to die. We really didn't, but we didn't know how to live. We were so stuck and numb and paralyzed. It felt like this limbo space. We didn't know where to go. And anyways, so yeah, putting myself back in that place was very scary. But I also knew at the time that I had brought myself out of it. I had the support and that I could do it again. So eventually I was able to let go, and it challenged where I was at in my recovery process too in the moment. And as I mentioned, it helped in the end with my healing.
That's so meaningful. I personally am thinking of creating a film depicting my own experience, but I'm also afraid of what it would mean and all the feelings that it would bring up, even if, like,
Yeah.
especially if you don't fully believe that you are 100% healed. But then I guess, like you're saying, it helps you to process all of those
Yeah.
things that you had never really
Yeah.
healed from.
I think I think if I could go back and do it again, I think I would have gotten ahead of it a little bit, maybe written some journals to myself for the end of each shooting night, reminding myself of my strength, reminding myself that this is a role I'm stepping into. I think one thing that would have helped me then is remembering that this is always going to be a piece of my woven cloth, but it is not my identity. It is something that I can relate to because I've been there. It's something that I still battle with. There are feelings, there are emotions in there that I still find myself experiencing, but remembering that is not my identity. And that journal prompt, at least for me, would have helped a lot to just read a little note to myself every single night that I wrote, reminding myself of my power, my strength, and my ability to recover from that moment and recover, and that everything is temporary. And it really is. We forget so often that these feelings come and go, even the good ones.
Yeah, especially if you're acting. You have to get so much into the character, and you don't really realize that being that character is temporary because
Yeah.
sometimes it just fully consumes you. So, what would you say to somebody if they're considering creating a film depicting their mental health or another piece of art that would really require them to re-enter that space, like, emotionally or mentally? Would it be just like, this is a piece in your woven cloth, or is there, like, another piece of advice that you
Yeah.
would give them if they decide they wanna pursue this?
For one, I think the journaling advice could really help. Write something to yourself. And if you're planning on doing this too, I encourage doing it. I think it's a great opportunity to explore more about it, to explore more about yourself, and to see it on a character that is based on you, but not you. If you can really lean into that character that you're portraying actually being a different individual, maybe you can see empathy in it in a way that you weren't able to on yourself. You can see it outside of yourself almost. So maybe just doing a lot of work and remembering that this character is not you, that you are bringing your relation to those experiences into it. But this character itself is not you. And I think the journaling, I think remembering to take care of yourself while you're in a good space, just in case. And you might not need it, but it doesn't hurt.
I totally agree with that. Therapy, journaling, all of these things are not only there for when things get bad, they're also like a precautionary
Yeah.
thing. And
Yeah.
so part of the experience around the film was, like, finishing it and seeing the impact that it had on other people, and so can you share any, like, specific moments you remember where the film and Project Blackbird really helped the audience, where people said stuff afterwards and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I could share so many. And if there's any way to share at some point with your viewers, just some of the journal prompts that these students write. So, one of the activities that we do following the panel, we have a journal prompt where we have our audience journal one thing that they struggle with, and then a message of hope to both themselves and a future Project Blackbird participant. And we do this real time anonymous exchange where they leave their response behind and they pick up a prior participant's response. And so we have all the responses of all of our students and in our non student audience members that fill this out as well. So that is a direct impact there. But I get to engage with all of our audience members in the back of the room. And I can share an example just a couple of weeks ago. He presented at a high school and at this high school, this young woman came up to me afterwards. Actually, I'll share two stories. Two young women came up to me. One was such an incredible champion already of mental health. She shared with me, and we have a little clip of it actually on our Instagram, but she shared with me some of her brother's struggles with an eating disorder and how she wanted to support. And she said, I don't know how to support him, but I see it. How do I do this? And so we had a conversation and then we interviewed her as well. And she shared with some of our audience why it is so important, even if you don't struggle with something in the moment, to understand, to want to understand, to be there as a supporter. She's phenomenal. And then we had another young woman who came up to me literally moments after, and she gave me her journal prompt and I read it. I connected with it very deeply. It was painful to read because I know what being in that state feels like. And she definitely shared with us some real traumas there and some really deep experiences. But what really stood out to me afterwards, she started crying and she said, I love that you all are providing therapy, but I can't use it because I don't have insurance. And I looked at her and I was like, girl, get out your phone right now. We're signing you up for therapy. I'm like, this is exactly who this free therapy is for. It is for someone that doesn't have insurance. And it was what happened afterwards that honestly was more emotional for me. She started crying and she said, I struggle with bipolar disorder and I'm back and forth and I don't feel like my mind is my mind anymore. And I didn't think that there was any hope. I didn't think that there was anything left for me. But this was giving her hope, that this gave her hope that there was some out, that there was some way that she could recover. And it's the hope that makes me emotional because so many individuals are not given the opportunity to experience that hope. And so many people think that this temporary is permanent. And so to be able to really change someone's world in that moment, give them just a glimmer of hope, just one, even if it's that one therapy session, but somebody out there is doing something for them. Someone out there can lift them up a little bit. There are so many stories like that I can tell. And men in the audience that I've seen cry because we've had an NFL player up on stage talking about how they have experienced depression or suicidal ideation or binge eating disorder or anorexia themselves. And seeing these boys in the audience for the first time feel like maybe it's okay that they can talk about it, that they struggle. I've had grown men ask me for journal prompts in the back of the room because they've never journaled before. Just so many various ways that I've gotten to see the impact of this.
Honestly, like, at a loss for words. That's so meaningful and just giving people hope, showing them that they're not alone, and then seeing the impact in real time, and then crying together and learning
Yeah.
that it's okay to cry. And a
We
lot of
have
people think that eating disorders only affect, like, girls who are, like, white girls, but that's really not the
thin
case.
white women is what, yes, it is
Yeah.
in our textbooks and the definitions of it too. That's a myth that I would like to debunk immediately. Anorexia does not mean you're not eating at all. Anorexia, bulimia do not just affect women, do not just affect white women. Eating disorders often do not manifest with body changes. So there could be every size of an individual with an eating disorder. And you might not notice because it might not affect everybody the same way, but we learn about it in a textbook where we do think that's what an eating disorder is. Yeah,
I
you hit the nail on the head.
do think that this would just help, like, those stereotypically eating disorder prone white
Textbook.
girls
Yes.
from the textbook definition of what an eating disorder is, but it's so meaningful just to hear, like, how many different people Project Blackbird helps.
Yeah.
And so, how can people, like, get involved in Project Blackbird? How can they maybe bring it to their school or their community or just
Yeah.
take advantage of all of these amazing resources that Project Blackbird offers?
I love that question and I love where you went with it because honestly, I'm so often asked the question, how do people support Project Blackbird? And the reason I like where you took it is it doesn't always have to be financial. It doesn't always have to be with financial support. Of course, that is very helpful. We love that and we need that. But there are so many incredible ways to support this mission and support this cause if you have zero, if you have nothing. And one of the largest ways that you mentioned is bring us to somebody that you need, connect us with your high school, your college, your local library, any organization that this might be a good fit with. If you know someone who is struggling, on our website, you can find my email, Alexandra at projectblackbirdinc.org. Please reach out. We offer the free therapy for our audiences and for our students. But if there is an individual that's struggling that reaches out to us, we want to help that individual. So if you know someone who is struggling, please email us. We will get you signed up. If you know someone that might be a good panelist, that's another way to help. Any connection, even if you just share, oh, this is a big one. Hashtag shed shame. That is the hashtag for our organization. And that hashtag means I stand for speaking up about mental health, vulnerability around mental health, getting rid of shame around mental health discussion. If you post hashtag shed shame, tag us, share our organization, share us on Instagram. Our Instagram is Project Blackbird Film. Those are all ways where if you don't have a single penny, it doesn't matter. You can support this mission and share your voice is the biggest thing. When you are willing and able to be vulnerable about your struggles, you make it safer for someone else to do the same. I am reminded by this again and again. As the founder of this organization, it has become my platform, if you will. When someone even asks me what I do, immediately they know about my struggles. So I can't hide it anymore. And whenever I tell somebody what I struggle with, I have never had a single person not relate in some manner. Either it's themselves or their kids or their best friend or their father or whoever. There is always someone that is in their life that that relates to that struggle. So you are not alone when you share.
Yeah. I mean, that's so meaningful because so many of the people who are listening to this hopefully are teenagers. And as teenagers, we don't really have a lot of money to
Yes,
spend
100%. I
to
remember those.
support organizations. But even if you're a teenager who doesn't even have a penny in your bank account, if you
Yeah,
even have a bank account, you can still support Project Blackbird and you can still try to use connections that you have with your school, your community to bring Project Blackbird there to just post the hashtag shed shame. It takes 2 seconds on Instagram just to spread
100%.
the word about this amazing organization. And then I guess a question that I had, because all of these celebrities are going in front of audiences and talking about their own struggles. Is it ever really emotional for the celebrities?
Very.
Do anything do you have any stories of times where things have come up for the celebrities that they weren't, like, intending on
Yeah.
sharing, but then they just felt so supported in that space that they
Yeah.
wanted to share?
I'll share one. Vittoria Zeta. She was one of our panelists at Festival of Cinema. And this she knew she was going to share, but it was the very first time that she was ever public about having an eating disorder. That one made me very emotional and made me realize how real this is for so many of our panelists. Watching her tear up on stage, feeling the kind of nervous excitement because she was about to do something so wonderful and huge and impactful, but this is a life. This is somebody really being vulnerable about their own experience. That was really moving. And then, unfortunately, for this one, I can't go into detail about
Mhm.
who and what it was, but I did have a panelist who opened up to me backstage before about various things that they struggled with that they related to on, but then they said to me, I'm not ready to share. And that was really hard because I guess I had to put on two different hats. The one hat was the human hat, realizing that, again, this is an individual and this is their life and this is huge for them. And they are actually going through this in the moment, struggling. and having compassion for that and having empathy for that, while also knowing that if and when they are ready one day to share, that's exactly what will help so many people is realizing that even their heroes are currently struggling, currently right now. And what I really would love to see, and I hope for this one day, I hope that everyone that we look up to as role models, my hope is that if we're hurting or we're shaping ourselves in a certain way or trying to be something that isn't ourselves out of pain, feeling that we need to look a certain way, be a certain way in order to be loved, in order to be validated. I want us to stop promoting that on social media. I hope for a world where we can just present ourselves as we are, full stop, just full stop. And I'm actually really amazed by you all the high schoolers out there. Honestly, high schoolers. I have two younger sisters who just entered college, all the college students. I think you all are going to save our world when it comes to mental health and advocacy. I see so many of you guys really caring so much about this planet, about the people on it, connecting with others. And it doesn't mean that everyone's perfect. It doesn't mean that everybody's doing it, but I'm seeing real change. And on the social media space as well, I see so much authenticity from those your age that are posting. So again, not everybody, not everything's perfect, but there's change. There's change happening.
Go us, I guess. We're
Yes.
amazing. We got it. We got it. We will make change in this world and by
You
being
will.
our authentic selves when we feel
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah.
And
And I think it's also important to highlight the positives too. We talk about so much pain, but we have to remember that there is hope and we have to remember that we are doing good things also. And we have to just keep doing more of that.
yeah. So I guess just one final question while we're on the topic of like teenagers. So if you could give just one piece of advice to your teenage self, what do you think that would be?
You're gonna make me cry, honestly. I'm honestly to my high school self. Um, when you go off to college, don't try to change yourself. Don't try to fit into a new group. Don't try to be with the group that you always wanted to be with or thought that you should be with. Go in and be, to me, I would say, go in and be your goofy self, your nerdy self. Go in and be everything that you are. And the people that love that will gravitate towards you and you will be so happy and fulfilled. And you don't need to change a single thing about yourself. That's what I would have told myself. And I really hope that everyone that is not yet in college that hears this, I really mean that. College is an incredible space where there is a group for everyone. There's a community for everyone. There's a circle for everyone. And we have to get it out of our heads that any one group is better or worse than another. There is no such thing. Connection is connection. And if you try to fake it, and you try to fit into some area that where you have to be your inauthentic self, it's going to end up hurting you. And honestly, if you can just lean into exactly who you are, you're going to find your lifelong friends. They're never leaving your side.
That's wow. That also connects so much to like high school too, because
Yeah.
high schools also are a little bit clicky. And when you come into high school, you feel like you have to change yourself to
Yeah.
fit in, but then you realize that you're not the person that needs to change, it's like the environment
Yeah.
and like finding an environment that loves you for who you are.
Yeah.
So I think that's just so amazing.
I
Oh
hope
my
that's
god.
helpful to somebody out there, really. And
That's really helpful to me, honestly. Like, I'm going into college
yeah,
soon and like somebody who sometimes struggles to find their place even at school, like it's
your
just
place is waiting for you. I'm telling you, you will have so many people championing you, loving you, your best friends for being exactly who you are.
oh, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. This has been so meaningful and so amazing, and I hope that to help the audience and that they'll go and they'll follow Project Blackbird film on Instagram and hashtag shed shame and just spread the word about this amazing organization to their community so that it can reach more people because there are so many people who could benefit from the amazing work and resources that Project Blackbird offers. So, thank you.
And thank you so much. I think the world of you and what you're doing. Thank you for honestly shedding shame around mental health. Thank you for being an advocate. Thank you for being a champion in your society, in your world. You are amazing. You really are. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be on this podcast with you.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, that's so meaningful. This episode was so meaningful to record, and I hope it's helped you. It's just so heartwarming to hear all the stories of people who have been impacted by Project Blackbird and by shedding shame around mental health. Here are my biggest takeaways from my conversation with Alexandra. So, starting off, everyone is struggling with something. Sometimes we're told to hide our struggles or that we can expect them to get better overnight. Project Blackbird helps to open that conversation around mental health by showing that even our heroes sometimes struggle and that it's okay to struggle. The second thing I learned was that film and other art are amazing mediums for capturing our experiences with mental health. They can help you and your audience to empathize with the experience that you depict in the art. It shows people that they're not alone in their journeys, their experiences, or their struggles. And then the next thing was that if you decide to create a piece of art that requires you to re enter the emotions that you're depicting, it's so important to remind yourself that you're not those feelings, right? So step outside of yourself. It can be so hard, but so therapeutic to create a character that's like you, but not you, and to develop empathy for that other version of your experiences. Something that really stuck with me were the stories Alexandra shared of how people realized that there was hope for them and that there was support out there. There's something so special about being able to see the impact that it has on someone when they realize they're not alone. And I hope this podcast has helped you to realize that you're not alone either. Another thing Alexandra mentioned that is really going to stick with me personally is that you don't need to change who you are at all, whatsoever, full stop. Like, no matter who you are or what you're interested in, there will always be a circle of people or an environment that will love you for being your authentic self. So don't change anything about you. Just work to find that loving environment. I promise it's out there. And finally, you don't need to have a single penny to support Project Blackbird and its mission. You can follow them on Instagram, and I've linked that in the show notes, so please follow them. You can reach out to organizations in your community that would benefit from Project Blackbird, and you can spread the word about this amazing organization. Use hashtag ShedShame to support destigmatizing the conversation around mental health and to show people that they're not alone. And you can go out there if you feel comfortable and share your own experience with your mental health to show somebody else that they're not alone. And if you or anyone you know needs the resources that Project Blackbird offers, you can find those all linked in the description, so please reach out to them. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this episode. Just by listening to this episode, you are helping to destigmatize the conversation around mental health. Thank you for listening to this episode of Balancing Act: Life and Struggles of a Teenage Girl. If this episode resonated with you, or if you know someone it could help, please feel free to share it with your loved ones or on social media. You can find us on Instagram at balancingact.podcast or on our website balancingact.life, which are both linked in the description. If you really want to support the podcast, leaving us a rating, hopefully a good one, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify would be invaluable. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, or if you want to suggest a topic or person for a future episode, please feel free to reach out to us through social media, our website, or email, which you can find on the website. Thanks again for taking the time to listen. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and remember, life's a balancing act. And sometimes you fall on your face, but you are not alone.